It's not often that you meet someone that you feel like you've known your whole entire life, and yet we've never met. She's a journalist, a pioneer, a campaigner and an inspiration. She is a force of nature, and I'm so excited to take her back to her home turf. I'm just going to gate crash if I can, because we're coming in to take Ita away.
Oh, my God.
Where are you taking her?
It's been really nice knowing you all.
We're taking her back to her childhood home, her turf. Can we whisk her away?
Yeah.
Oh, bring her back. We will. Welcome, Ita. Look, I prepared this car earlier.
Yes, that's got a few creaks, I hear.
It's certainly got a few creaks, but I've got my chauffeur's hat ready to go. Because it's time Ita got chauffeured again.
Look, I'm all for that.
The great thing about these cars, of course, is people avoid you because it's an enormous, heavy car. Ita, no second name required, has been an icon of the Australian media landscape for 5 decades and shows no sign of slowing down. She's been celebrated in film, song and comedy.
Fall there in the Australian Woman's Weekly. I know Ita Budrow, she's going to kill me.
Today I'm taking her back to her childhood haunts and her school to find out more about Ita. Thank you, taxi driver. A miracle just happened, Ita. The taxi driver let us in.
Occasionally it happens.
Oh, it's like it is a Christmas miracle come early.
Is it easy to drive?
It is easy to drive, actually. I'm delighted to hear that you didn't actually start driving until you were 40. Did you not need a car when you were 18?
I just grew up in a family we didn't have one. We used to get the bus or the tram, or we'd walk. When I got married, my husband picked me up. There was no reason. Then when I became editor of the weekly, the packers gave me a car with a chauffeur.
Yeah.
You think, well, this is fine. There was no need. And then finally, when I went to work for Rupert Murdoch, said they'll give me a car, but not a driver. And so when you have to pay for your own driver, it's a big incentive, you see. So I looked and I thought, this is ridiculous. All these people can drive. If they can drive, I must be able to drive. So I took a week off work and went to driving school.
Now, you're just down here. Fantastic, here it is.
It's very different. Very different.
Let's have a look.
The things that haven't changed are the gum trees. This gum tree and the big gum tree in the middle of the lawn.
That's a beautiful thing that they're actually still there.
Yeah, well, how could you chop it down? It's so beautiful.
This seems like a very affluent area. Were you a rich family?
No, this was a street of kids and dogs when we all lived here. This was Peter Weir, the film director, grew up next door.
Wow!
And on this side was Trish Burns, who's one of my oldest friends, and we used to all meet at the beach and play with all the other kids in the street and the dogs. Peter would put on plays and we'd all be in them.
Oh.
Our house was very family friendly, and I'm sure this one is too.
You were born in Potts Point, but when you were born, your dad actually wasn't around. Where was he?
Dad was in Java. He was reporting on the war for the Sydney Morning Herald. He actually covered what's called the Owen Stanley Rangers campaign, which of course included Kokoda. It was dangerous work, and like almost everybody that you read about that went to World War II, he never spoke about it very much.
So your dad got a photo sent from a photographer.
When I was 6 months.
Yeah, wonderful way to sort of see this.
Well,
incredible.
the war was on.
Yeah. Was your mum a local?
At some point, yes, she lived in Rose Bay.
How did they meet?
My mother was going out with a conductor called Joseph Post, who ended up being a principal conductor with the Sydney Symphony. And Dad was doing some music reviews, and Joe Post said to Dad, I'm working tonight, I'm conducting. Could you take care of, my girlfriend Claire? They were going to the concert. Well, that was a terrible mistake, wasn't it? Because I don't know that it was instant. But anyway, romance was kindled, and they got married. And Joe Post became the godfather to my elder brother Julian.
Oh, extremely understanding.
Yeah, very understanding.
He must have been lovely company, your father. Claire must have enjoyed Charles's company.
Dad sang. Dad had a terrific tenor voice. He studied singing at the Elder Conservatorium in Adelaide. My mother was an Amos A pianist, and she used to play with some of the musicians of the Sydney Symphony. So they had a lot of musical interests in common.
But because the family was so musical, and I read somewhere that even if you got tonsillitis, no one could get those tonsils out because you never know. One day...
My parents wouldn't allow us to have our tonsils out because they kept hoping one of us would be an opera singer.
Did they really? You could have been Dame Ita Buttrose with your own concert hall.
I had many a case of tonsillitis because my parents wanted an opera singer. Alas, it was not me.
Oh. Your parents were great entertainers. They had great dinner parties. What was that like for a young girl listening from her bedroom?
I often snuck out on the veranda and watched them now. I could see the guests sort of having a good time, dancing or whatever on the veranda. And I used to think, gosh, those people know how to live. Wow, look at them go. They were just...
What were they
full
doing?
Of life. Well, they always had an opinion, and they were always full of life, and they enjoyed it. And my father, I thought, seemed to know everything. I could go walking with Dad, and, you could talk to Dad about anything, and he seemed to always have the answer.
Well, let's take a little walk down to Parsley Bay, to your real backyard. Now, this is a playground.
It sure is.
Oh, it's incredible. So you used to come down here with that gang of kids, Peter Weir, all your brothers,
yep,
and play here?
Absolutely.
Were you competitive with your brothers?
Always. I think probably that was something that stood me in stead all my life, that growing up with three boys, you did learn to be competitive.
And did you ever feel that as a girl you could be held back?
No, look, I don't think so. I felt that whatever the boys could do, I could do. And I think that's what I've done.
I think it is.
So I've always felt quite comfortable in the company of men and working in an all-male atmosphere.
There's a lot of Italian boys swimming here at the moment.
They're having a good time.
They're having a great time, and they're mainly in their underwear, which is not something I particularly expected I to have to watch today.
I don't have a problem with seeing men in underwear.
I'm so glad you grew up in Parsley Bay because we get to sit here.
I know.
I know.
It's lovely, isn't it?
I can imagine how lovely it was to be here with your brothers and playing and all those kids everywhere. Back at home, it sounds like your dad was he who must be obeyed. He was an old-fashioned dad that expected rules to be followed.
Oh, too right he did.
Did he?
Yes, Dad was Dad. Yes, Dad was, you did what Dad said.
You used to bring your dad, make your dad a pot of tea every morning.
Yeah, and sometimes his breakfast when he was editor of the Daily Mirror. And I liked it. I would get up and I'd make Dad's breakfast, and then we'd be reading the papers and we might talk about a story. But I didn't interrupt his routine, I mean, when we had dinner at night time, Dad, even when he was working on a morning newspaper, Dad used to come home for dinner and the 7 o'clock news would come on the ABC and you had to be quiet. Anyone who spoke while the news was on got into trouble. So it's we listened to the news from as early as I can remember.
It's interesting because you became a journalist and that's what your father was. It sounds like with those talks and just even seeing what he's into in the newspaper, having seen friends come to your house, you're not only behind the world behind it, how it works.
Oh, we all knew how it worked. I mean, we knew how, we knew the hours, we knew the discipline that's required, and we also saw Dad demoted. Dad was editor of the Mirror and it was owned by Ezra Norton. And one day the paper was late and Mr. Norton came out and said, "Buttrose, why is the paper late?" And Dad said, "I'll tell you why, Mr. Norton, we don't have enough sub-editors." "Oh," he said, "that's the case, Buttrose." He said, "Fine, we'll make you a sub-editor." And he demoted Dad like that. Dad came home and there was the family dinner and, you know, Mum and Dad are discussing this terrible happening and we're listening, we're thinking, gosh, you know, Dad's job, wow, what does this mean? So I learnt very early about the sudden ups and downs of being a journalist and just how tough the media is.
Your mother was working as well at this time. What was she doing?
Public relations. My mother was in public relations.
She also seems to have a very humanitarian side to her. She took in young women into your house.
Well, the poor girls were called unmarried mothers. That's because they were not married and they were pregnant and Mum needed a bit of help in the house. And Mum being Mum, inevitably, you know, the father would call and before you knew it, Mum had sorted out all their problems and married them off and off they went. I tell you, we had a lot of weddings. She sorted them all out. I often wonder how they all got on and how their lives turned out because, you know, they were lovely girls and we loved having babies in the house.
You say that your parents didn't get on towards the end and there was a divorce, but how was it sort of when you were sort of 9 or 10? How did they get on?
They got on very well. They had great dinner parties. They were... I mean, I'm pretty sure they loved each other a lot. They just used to have lots of Donnybrooks, that's all. You know, there'd be shoes flying up and down the corridor and all our doors are open the corridor and you think, oh, Mum and Dad. So you'd shut the door again and leave them to it.
But how did it affect you? Did it worry you?
Well, I don't think it worried us, you know, but I mean, obviously when the marriage broke up, yeah, that was upsetting for all of us, you know, because it's like all kids everywhere, you want your parents to stay together.
And be happy.
Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't work out. You have to accept it.
We're going to meet Fairley. Tell us about Fairley. She's your cousin.
Yes, well, there's Fairley and Caroline and Peter Kingston. They all lived on the other side of the bridge. And we used to play with them down here at the beach.
Well, what a coincidence.
Who would have thought?
Hi, Fairley.
Hi, Julian. Oh, lovely to meet you.
Hello, cousin.
Oh, lovely to see you.
You too, darling.
What's your memory, Fairley, of walking into the Buttrose house up on that hill?
Sometimes in families you'll get an extrovert member. There were 6 in the Buttrose household.
Well,
they were wonderful.
isn't everybody like us?
Yes, everyone's an extrovert, it would seem. What have you got there? What have you brought as far as here?
Well, this is a very rare photograph of Ita in a school uniform, and it's a little snapshot of me looking, I'd say, at about 18 months old, looking adoringly up at Ita, which I've sort of kept doing ever since.
Is that right?
She was always very confident. She seemed to know just exactly where she was headed. And she was very beautiful.
And the wonderful thing about growing up with your cousins, and with Fairley in particular, is that they've known you all your life. They know who you are, they know what you like. They don't see you as Ita Buttrose, that public person out there. I'm just cousin Ita. It's a wonderful relationship. I think your relationship with your cousins can be very, very special.
So great to meet you, Fairley. We're off to your high school now, I think from where that uniform might be from.
I haven't been back here for a while.
You haven't been back here for a while.
I haven't.
It's called Rose Bay Secondary College now, but back then, what was it called?
Dover Heights Home Science High School.
Home Science High School. Just for girls?
Just for girls.
Just for girls.
It was a select high school. You had to sit for an exam to get in.
Does it look the same from the front here?
Yeah, pretty much, except of course the vine hadn't grown that much. From memory, that was the principal's office. So you didn't come to this part of the school often.
Do you remember this corridor?
Yeah, I do. This corridor seems to have some ghosts walking along it for me.
There's always ghosts in schools, isn't there?
Yes. I think we used to go upstairs for cookery.
Cookery?
Home economics.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's where we're taking you, to the home science level.
Oh, it's taking me back. So it's a while since I went to school, but I do remember looking out the windows at the view. I learned how to make bread. I can preserve fruit. I can make scones. I can cook a fish. I can do all those things. We were taught all those things, cheap, you know, stews. It was a less affluent time.
this is what would have been expected of a girl in the 50s, wouldn't it, really?
Well, I don't think it was all that bad an idea that people learned home economics. I think the problem, what happened was that when equality came, they decided this was something girls shouldn't do. I think that was a mistake. I think we should have kept on doing it, and they should have made the classes available to boys.
Shall we go down and have a look at the hall? The school hall.
Yep.
Did you want to whip up a little quick something while we're here?
Well, I could whip you up a little gruel if you like.
A little gruel. You made it sound extremely appetising. No gruel today. The souffle maybe next time.
So this has all been flattened. I suppose it's easier to use for the school.
Here we go. This is the hall.
Oh, yes, this hasn't changed much. Hasn't changed much at all. It's funny coming back to your school haunts and remembering what life was like. You didn't really know a thing.
Now, you would have done a bit of Gilbert and Sullivan up there.
I did. I did the Gondoliers and, what else? HMS Pinafore. Yes. Yes.
Did you do debating at all?
Yes, I did debating. I was a bit frightened about debating because, you know, when you're young, it's a big deal to get up there and debate.
Extremely big deal.
I like it much more now.
Do you?
My friend Jenny and I wagged school one day. We wagged sport. We were very romantically minded, so we went to see the matinee performance of Kismet, the musical. So we had a wonderful time at the movies that afternoon, and we get on the bus, and there's Miss Madison, one of the cooking teachers. And I thought my friend Jenny was going to have a heart attack.
So busted. So in trouble.
Yeah, we got into trouble the next day.
I'm glad to hear you got in trouble once, Ita.
But we did enjoy the movie.
I'm sure. School sounded like it was a happy place.
Yeah, it was a happy place.
Your parents fought a lot, but there was this sense also for you in terms of your future of, well, perhaps the only person who will look after me will be me.
And I think as life's turned out, that's proven to be correct.
Do you think resilience is something that is thrust upon you, or do you think it's something that you can find?
I think you can find it because I think life sometimes takes us all by surprise. It's so full of detours. And how you cope with life's detours is really what shapes you as a person. I've just always thought, no one else is going to pick me up. No one else is going to do it for me. So I better pick myself up and I better get going.
In your biography, you muse on the fact that you feel your mother wasted a lot of her life. What did you mean by that?
I mean, I think she could have done a lot more than she actually did with her life. She wasn't particularly well for a long part of her life for all sorts of reasons, and I'm not going into them. She had such skills. She was such a wonderfully accomplished pianist. She was a very kind-hearted woman, and I just think that her life could have been a lot richer had she participated in life a little more.
And do you think that pushed you to achieve?
I think it made me more determined to be independent.
When you finally leave here at 15 to go into the workforce, can you paint a picture for me of that first day you walked into the newsroom?
Oh, gosh. Well, because I was a copy girl, so you ran messages. It had one of those funny old-fashioned bellboard things like you see in upstairs, downstairs. So if the news editor wanted you, there would be something would be pressed and a flap would fall down and you'd think, news editor. So you'd go to the news editor and see what she wanted, yes. And again, it was big. There were so many people at the Weekly and they were all men. And I mean, I had a lot of dealings with men, you know, and I'm going in with their tea and their coffee. And you can hardly look at them. It was just almost too much.
Yeah.
It's a lot when you're 15 to cope with all those adults.
15.
And quite frankly, you didn't speak until you were spoken to.
You moved quickly through. By 23, you're women's editor at the Daily Telegraph. Sir Frank Packer was very impressed by you. What do you think made you stand out? I
put my hand up and asked for the job. I'd done my training. I'd done my training on the 2 telegraphs, and so around about when I was 23, the women's editor of the Daily and Sunday Telegraphs left. So I thought, I'll apply. So I wrote a note to Sir Frank asking if I could be considered for the job of women's editor, and he rang me up and said, "Here you want the job of women's editor?" And I said, "Well, yes, Sir Frank." And he said, "You're married, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, Sir Frank." He said, "You might be going to have babies." And I said, "Not at the moment, Sir Frank." And so I got the job. And I think he took an interest in my career from that moment on.
Did any of the older journalists, what did they think of your ascension?
Not much.
Could you sense that? Were you aware of it?
Oh, yes, I was, because some of them quit because they thought I was too young.
No. They quit?
They did.
In protest?
Yes, they did. Look, it just makes you work harder. And, of course, I had a lot to learn. And 23, of course I had a lot to learn. And then I just kept learning and studying and looking at things.
Like you said, you were married. You married Alastair MacDonald. You had 2 children, Kate and Ben. But in just a decade, you've gone from being a 15-year-old girl at Parsley Bay, and now you're a major media force. You're a mother and a wife. Did you ever stop to catch your breath and think, how did I get here?
No. I didn't stop to think, how did I get here? No, I was having a good time. I was doing what I wanted to do. I really love my work. I love being a journalist. I love writing. I love creating products. I love getting an idea and making it work. I love the power of the media. I love the fact that we can help somebody who needs to be helped. I love the way we can raise awareness about big issues. I mean, you wouldn't be dead for quids. This is the best job in the world.
In your 20s and 30s, feminism swept the world. Did it grab you immediately, this concept?
I suspect that I might have always been a feminist, but
you didn't have to wait for a movement.
No, it just sharpened my edges a little bit, I think. You know, you just thought, yeah, this is the way it should be. Come along for the ride.
This month, Clio magazine talks to Don Dunstan, South Australia's dynamic premier, and that's only the beginning.
Can you tell me that great story about when you wanted to do an article on masturbation in Clio and you had to get it past?
It was actually an article. Yes, it was to do with frigidity.
Yes.
And Kerry Packer took a great interest. See, Clio was Kerry's first great success because Sir Frank turned the magazine over to him. He didn't understand the new progressive woman. So Kerry used to pop in and, you know, we'd have story conferences and Kerry would pop in. Oh, he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I think there were 3 or 4 of us working out the layout. And I said, "Oh, I'm just deciding where to put this story on how masturbation can help women overcome frigidity." And he pales and he says, "Oh, no, not masturbation. What will I tell the old man?" And I said, "Oh, tell him it's medical."
Oh, brilliant. Because it is. It was medical.
I think Sir Frank gave Kerry quite a difficult time from time to time with Clio.
So who have we got in the back here now, Ita?
Well, the dog has decided it would like a walk in Centennial Park, and she's very happy to travel in cars.
How beautiful is this park?
Isn't it lovely? Certain parts of the park, the dog can be off the leash, which is fantastic. So the dog relishes it as well.
You and Kerry Packer had such a great working relationship. What did you see in each other?
Like minds. You know, we could see the big idea. If one of us had a big idea, the other could see it. We just had the same mindset. And I think we had the same sense of humour as well. He did have a great sense of humour, and I don't think that's ever been really captured in all those TV series that have been done recently about the Packers. The only side you ever saw was Kerry losing his temper, which he could do remarkably well, I have to say. But he also did have this wonderful sense of humour and a terrific curiosity.
Were you surprised by people's fascination with your friendship?
No, I think it just goes with the turf.
Do you feel that when you're a public figure, you have a responsibility to give back?
No, I don't have to give back because I'm a public figure. I give back because I want to. I give back because I'm a human being. And I think life is about giving back. It's not just taking. And you asked me about my mother earlier. I mean, those are the lessons I learned from my mother. To give back, to think of others. If I have to raise my voice until I am hoarse, then so be it.
You're the National Ambassador of Alzheimer's Australia. You saw your father go through vascular dementia. It must have been a very confronting thing to see.
It's dreadful to see, someone you love just losing it and in you. And sometimes I go around and I'd say, how are you today, Dad? And he'd say, well, you must know I'm feeling a bit depressed. And there was nothing I could do. But he did want to stay in his own home, and he died 10 days shy of 90, and we did keep him in his own home.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you value most at 73?
Gosh, living, I think. Life. Just being able to do the things I want to do. There's always something else. That's the trouble. You see, you get to the mountain and you think, this is good, the view is good, and then you think, oh, there's another mountain. What's up there? I keep climbing mountains. I mean, sometimes I have to push myself a bit more. Sometimes I get home and I think, God, I'm feeling a bit knackered. I think, well, it won't do. You have to go for a walk. And Cleo says, yes, we have to go for a walk. And you think, OK, I'll do it. And, of course, once you put one foot in front of the other and start going, then it's OK.
Yeah.
It's OK.
Positive ageing is something you're very involved with. What is positive ageing?
Age is just a destination in your life. And you almost feel that getting old is some terrible fate. But in fact, not everybody does get to be old. So if you get to be old, I think that's fantastic. Life is here to be lived at whatever age you are.
For a long time you've been single. How's that been?
I just accept it's the way it's meant to be for me. I don't think everybody's destined to have relationships. I mean, I've had relationships, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have some children, would I? But maybe that's the way it is for me. I think you just have to accept that's it. That's fate. But you never say never, because you do never know what's going to happen. But I'm quite happy.
That's so funny, because you could meet someone walking here, walking your dog, perhaps.
Yeah, people tell me it's a great way to meet a person, but I've got to tell you, Cleo, you've let me down.
And look, she's on her feet. I've let her down. If 14-year-old Ita were to walk through these trees and walk past, what would you say to her?
Climb every mountain.
It's a good answer. And you have. Ita, it's been so fabulous spending the day with you and taking you back to your home turf and to your school. Thank you so much.
Not at all. I'll tell you what, you've stirred up a lot of memories and I shall enjoy thinking about them.
I hope they're all good ones.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Well, look, I think we should go for a walk.
OK.
We've got the dog, like Cleo. She's dying to go for a walk.
Let's go, Clay.